Welcome back to Parasitology. Hi, I'm Christopher. In this video, we are going to organize ticks without drowning in them. That's the promise of ticks without tears. Ticks are not just bugs on skin. They are blood-feeding arthropods, and some of them are major vectors of veterinary and public health importance. But the trick is not to memorize every tick in isolation. The trick is to learn the patterns. By the end, I want you thinking in a practical order: hard or soft tick, genus-level cues, host and habitat pattern, then clinical concern. In other words, tick identification is not trivia. Tick identification helps you predict what you should worry about next. And yes, ticks are small, but as we will see, their ecologic drama is not. They are tiny mobile syringes with legs, persistence, and frankly, opinions. First, the basics. Ticks are arachnids, not insects. So the adult and nymph stages have 8 legs. Larvae are the exception with 6 legs. Now, if you see a tick with 10 or 12 legs, that's not biology. It's either a mistake, a horror movie, or an AI image having a very bad day. The word arachnid comes from the Greek arachne, meaning spider. That is a helpful reminder that ticks are closer to spiders and mites than to fleas and lice, which helps explain their cephalothorax, the combined head and thorax segment. Ticks are ectoparasites, meaning that they feed on the outside of the host and that they are obligate blood feeders. The important point is that ticks are shaped by strategy. They do not just randomly appear on animals. Different ticks use different host-seeking behaviors, different habitats, different life cycles, and different host communities. Clinically, that means a tick is a clue. Genus plus host plus geography can point us towards a very different disease concern. The tick is not the whole diagnosis, but it starts the story. Now let us split ticks into 2 big families you must recognize: hard ticks and soft ticks. Hard ticks are the Ixodidae. The name Ixodes comes from a Greek word meaning sticky or clammy, which feels emotionally accurate. These ticks have a scutum, a hard dorsal shield. Scutum literally means shield. In hard ticks, the capitulum or mouthpart region is visible from above. Capitulum means little head, even though technically the tick head is not a true insect-style head. Hard ticks usually feed for longer periods, often days, and many of the medically important species take 1 major blood meal per active stage. Their life cycles are often measured in years, but the number of feedings is relatively restricted. Soft ticks are the Ergacidae. They do not have a scutum. They have a leathery body, and the capitulum is usually not visible from the dorsal view. Many soft ticks feed quickly and then leave the host. Some have several nymphal stages and repeated feedings. Some Anithodorus species can survive for years, sometimes approaching a decade or more in favorable circumstances. In summary, hard ticks usually commit to fewer, longer meals. Soft ticks often come back for repeated meals. Hard ticks are the slow restaurant diner customer that likes to savor their meal. Soft ticks are the suspicious midnight snacker. For the common hard ticks, we can make life much easier by asking 2 visual questions. First, is the scutum ornate or inornate? Ornate means patterned or decorated, while inornate means plain. Second, are the mouth parts long or short? That gives us a practical sorting table. Remember A and D, and the amblyoma and dermacenter are always decorating. If it helps, ticks whose names start with vowels commonly have long mouth parts. I say always because this table reviews major tick genera in North America. There are many dozens of genera of ticks and hundreds of species worldwide. This table is not every tick on Earth. It's a flashlight, not a satellite. It is a high-yield clinical framework. You still need eyes, festoons, anal groove, basis capituli, and species-level context when doing formal identification. But for first-pass clinical thinking, this table is gold. A few vocabulary words help. Festoons are small scalloped grooves at the posterior edge. The scutum is the dorsal shield. The capitulum includes the mouthpart region. And these are not just anatomy terms. They are tiny signposts that help you narrow the genus and species. Pattern to remember: ornate plus mouthpart length quickly narrows common hard tick genre in North America. Now we move from tick identification to vector logic. A vector relationship is not simply tick bites animal and bad things happen. It is more like an ecological equation. Tick genus, reservoir host, pathogen, and incidental host all interact. Take Ixodes. The tick ecology involves wooded habitat, deer that support adult tick populations, and small mammals or birds that can connect immature ticks to pathogens. That is why Ixodes immediately raises Lyme disease, anaplasmosis, babesiosis, and selected viral concerns. Dermacenter gives you a different pattern: open habitats, dog and wildlife, larger mammals, and concerns such as Rocky-Mounted spotted fever, tularemia, and tick paralysis. Amblyoma adds aggressive host seeking and wildlife-rich habitats, so the worry list shifts again: ehrlichiosis, Rickettsia parkeri context, cytoxoonosis, Hepatozoon americanum, alpha-gal, and other regional concerns. Rhipicephalus sanguineus changes the ecology completely because it is dog adaptive and it can live in the kennel and home environments. So the key message is this: ticks do not transmit pathogens randomly. Vector competence depends on tick species, host associations, geography, and pathogen biology. The tick gives you the opening chapter, not the whole novel. The first life cycle strategy is the one-host tick. The key is to count animals, not blood meals or developmental stages. The eggs hatch in the environment and the larva finds a suitable host. Once aboard, it feeds and molts into a nymph. The nymph feeds and molts into an adult, and the adult feeds as well. All three parasitic stages remain on the same individual animal. While a one-host tick will live on one individual, some one-host tick species will use multiple animal species to parasitize. Molting occurs directly on the host rather than after each stage dropping off into the environment. Eventually, the engorged female leaves the host and deposits her eggs off-host, beginning the cycle again. This strategy can allow tick populations to build rapidly on an animal, and it makes animal movement especially important. Moving an infested cow or horse may move larvae, nymphs, and adults together, essentially transporting most of the active life cycle. Important examples include the cattle fever ticks, Rhipicephalus microplus and Rhipicephalus annulatus, the tropical horse tick, Dermacenter nitens, and the winter tick, Dermacenter albopictus. The pattern is simple. One host means one animal carries the larva, nymph, and adult story. Two-host ticks use an intermediate strategy. They switch hosts, but not after every developmental stage. The larva finds the first host, feeds, and then molts into a nymph while remaining on that same animal. The nymph feeds there as well. After the nymphal blood meal, the tick drops off into the environment and molts into an adult. The adult then finds a second host and takes the final blood meal. So the immature stages share one animal, while the adult finishes the cycle on another. This creates more opportunity for host movement and ecological mixing than a one-host tick life cycle, but less than the three-host strategy we will see next. Time in the environment between hosts may also allow seasonal delays or overwintering. Many Hyaloma species use a two-host pattern, and Rhipicephalus evertsi, the red-legged tick, is another important example. These ticks often become relevant in livestock movement, importation, and foreign animal disease discussions. The pattern to remember is larva nymph on host 1, adult on host 2. It's the tick world's compromised position. The three-host strategy creates the greatest number of separate host encounters. A larva feeds on the first host, drops into the environment, and molts into a nymph. The nymph then finds a second host, feeds, drops off, and molts again. Finally, the adult attaches to a third host and takes a final blood meal. The important point is that three host means three different individual animals. Those animals may belong to the same species or to entirely different species. This is what makes many three-host ticks such effective ecological bridges. A larva may feed on a small mammal or bird, and the nymph may attach to another wildlife host, and the adult may eventually feed on a dog, livestock animal, or person. Pathogens and host communities can intersect at multiple points in the life cycle. Because the tick must repeatedly find hosts and survive between stages, the full cycle may take several years, especially in temperate environments. Examples may include many species of Ixodes, Dermacentor, Amblyomma, and Haemaphysalis, as well as Rhipicephalus sanguineus. The pattern is 3 host encounters mean 3 opportunities for host ecology, geography, and pathogens to cross paths. Let us start the genus tour with Ixodes, the black-legged tick pattern. The name Ixodes comes from a Greek word meaning sticky or clammy. For identification, think inornate hard tick, long mouth parts, no eyes, no festoons, and the famous anal groove anterior to the anus. That anal groove is one of the great parasitology details. It sounds obscure until it helps you identify the tick. 2 important North American species are Ixodes scapularis, the black-legged tick in the eastern and central region, and Ixodes pacificus, the western black-legged tick along the Pacific coast. Ecologically, think woodland and brush, leaf litter, edge habitats, deer, small mammals, and birds. Adult ticks often connect to larger hosts such as deer, while immature stages are important in reservoir ecology. Clinically, Ixodes should make you think Borrelia burgdorferi, Anaplasma phagocytophilum, Babesia microti, and selected viral concerns such as Powassan virus, a tiny tick with a very long differential diagnosis. Next is Dermacentor. The name is useful. Derma means skin, and kentor means piercer. So Dermacentor is, very roughly, the skin piercer. Subtle? No. Memorable? Absolutely. These are ornate hard ticks with short mouth parts. They usually have eyes and festoons, and the scutum often has a cream or white ornamentation on a darker background. When you see a classic ornate hard tick with short mouth parts, Dermacentor should rise on the list. The key North American examples are Dermacentor variabilis, the American dog tick, and Dermacentor andersoni, the Rocky Mountain wood tick. Rather than memorize a perfect map, use geography as a clue. Dermacentor variabilis is an eastern and central U.S. pattern with some western exceptions. Dermacentor andersoni is more Rocky Mountain and western pattern. Ecologically, think open habitats, grass, brush edges, dogs, wildlife, and humans. Immature stages often use smaller mammals, and adults feed on larger mammals. Clinically, Dermacentor points you towards Rocky Mountain spotted fever, tularemia, tick paralysis, and Colorado tick fever, especially with Dermacentor andersoni. Amblyomma is the ornate, long-mouthed, high-drama tick group. The name Amblyomma comes from the Greek words meaning blunt or dull plus eye. That is not the most helpful memory hook, so I would not overthink it. The practical hook is much better. Amblyomma ticks often have long mouth parts and can be very aggressive host seekers. 2 important species include Amblyomma americanum, the Lone Star tick, and Amblyomma maculatum, the Gulf Coast tick. Amblyomma americanum adult females have the famous Lone Star spot. Amblyomma maculatum has its own ornate Gulf Coast tick pattern. For recognition, think ornate hard tick, long mouth parts, eyes present, festoons present, and an aggressive feeding lifestyle. Long mouth parts also help explain why these bites can be so inflammatory. Ecologically, think wildlife-rich habitats, brush, grass, edge environments, an expanding range story for some species. Larvae and nymphs often feed on small mammals and birds, while adults use larger mammals, including dogs and people. Clinically, Amblyomma raises concern with Ehrlichia chaffiensis, Ehrlichia ewingi, Rickettsia parkeri, Cytoxune, Hepatozoon americanum, alpha-gal syndrome, and tick paralysis. Now we come to Rhipicephalus sanguineus, the brown dog tick. The genus name Rhipicephalus comes from the Greek words meaning fan-like head. That refers to the shape of the basis capituli, the base of the mouthpart region. The species name sanguineus means blood-colored or bloody, which is a little on the nose for a tick. This is the dog kennel tick. It is inornate, brown, hard tick with short mouthparts, eyes, and festoons. It is strongly associated with dogs and dog environments. The real clinical is that Rhipicephalus sanguineus can complete its life cycle in kennels, homes, and other indoor environments, especially in warm conditions. This is not just a tick from outside. This is a tick that can move into a building and start paying emotional rent. Larvae, nymphs, and adults commonly feed on dogs. That means infestations can become a household or kennel problem, and prevention must include both the patient and the environment. Clinically, think Ehrlichia canis, Babesia vogeli, Hepatozoon canis, Anaplasma platus, and rocky-mounted spotted fever in some regions. Some ticks visit. Rhipicephalus sanguineus considers leasing options. Now let's add a few hard ticks that are very important for context. First is Hemophysalis longicornis, the Asian longhorn tick. The word Hemophysalis roughly means blood and bladder or puffed up sac. Longicornis means long-horned. The name sounds almost elegant, but clinically this is an invasive, high-burden tick concern. In the United States, Asian longhorn tick populations are often parthenogenetic, meaning females can reproduce without mating. That gives this tick an impressive invasion strategy. It is small, inornate, and short-mouthed. At first glance, it can resemble Rhipicephalus sanguineus. Immature stages commonly use small animals, and adults feed on larger mammals, including livestock and wildlife. Heavy infestations can cause major blood loss, and Tyleria orientalis concern in cattle is very important. Then we have cattle fever ticks, historically the Buophilus group. They have now been placed within Rhipicephalus. Buophilus is a wonderful old name. Buo means ox or cow, and philos means loving. These are cow-loving ticks in the most unhelpful way possible. The key species are Rhipicephalus microplus and Rhipicephalus annulatus. Think one host cattle tick pattern, regulatory importance, bovine babesiosis concern with Babesia bovis and Babesia bigemina, and Anaplasma marginale. Now, we return to soft ticks. Soft ticks are in the family Argacidae. They do not have a scutum. Their bodies are leathery, and their capitulum is not visible dorsally. Many species feed quickly and repeatedly, which gives them a very different clinical pattern from hard ticks. The first species is Atobius magnini, the spinosed ear tick. Oto means ear, bios means life, so the genus name basically tells you where to look. Atobius larvae and nymphs parasitize the ear canal. Adults do not feed. In practice, think otitis, irritation, head shaking, and ear pain, especially in large mammals such as horses and cattle. The second is Ornithodoros. The name means gift of the bird. but do not let the name mislead you. Clinically, many important Ornithodore species are tied to nests, burrows, shelters, cabins, and repeated brief feeding. They may feed fast and leave before anyone knows what happened. Very rude, very effective. Some Ornithodore species are associated with tick-borne relapsing fever Borrelia. Now let's turn tick identification into clinical reasoning. The question is not only, what is the tick? It is, what pattern is this case giving me? Start with the patient and its lifestyle. A ranch dog, barn cat, imported horse, backyard chicken, and beef herd do not show the same exposures. Next, consider geography and travel. Is this a woodland, pasture, kennel, shelter, or ear canal problem? Then examine the tick. Is it hard or soft? Ornate or inornate? Are the mouth parts long or short? Can you identify a genus-level pattern? Add the exposure details. Is the tick engorged? Are there one or many? Is this an isolated attachment or an environmental infestation? Finally, match the clinical signs, such as fever, anemia, lameness, neurologic disease, otitis, pruritus, or local inflammation. Tick diagnosis is pattern recognition: patient, place, parasite, exposure, and clinical signs. There is no single tick vibes test. We have to put all the clues together. Recognition matters, but prevention is where we can protect. Use a layered approach. Protect the patient with an effective, appropriately labeled preventive, regular tick checks, and prompt removal of attached ticks. Manage the environment when practical by reducing tall grass, brush, leaf litter, and tick habitat. Treat kennels or premises when needed. For herds and flocks, use strategic acaricides, seasonal timing, monitoring, quarantine of new arrivals, and careful attention to resistance and label directions. Finally, remember that cattle fever ticks, invasive species, and unusual disease patterns may require reporting, surveillance, or movement control. The goal is simple: reduce exposure, prevent disease, and protect the animal and public health. No single tool is perfect, so combine methods, stay consistent, and reassess. Because modern flea and tick protection often include isoxazolines, let's review the class. Important members include afoxolaner, fluorolaner, loadlaner, and ceralaner. Notice that every name ends in laner, so I jokingly call them the laner family. Their family reunions are extremely bad news for fleas and ticks. Isoxazolines act on GABA-gated and glutamate-gated channels. Disrupting this signaling produces paralysis and death in many arthropods. The molecule shown is afoxolaner. Molecular structure influences receptor binding, stability, pharmacokinetics, and clinical performance. Molecules are not glitter magic, their chemistry matters. Isoxazolines are important tools for flea and tick control, but they should be selected for the individual patient and used accordingly to the product label. Also remember the class safety warnings. Tick biology helps us understand the risk, and isoxazolines help us reduce that risk by protecting the patient. Let's put the whole story together. First, identify: hard or soft tick? What morphology clues do you see? Can you narrow the genus or species group? Second, understand the risk. Geography, host, habitat, and vector potential change the worry list. Third, assess the patient. A tick on a healthy dog is not the same clinical story as ticks on an anemic calf, a neurologic dog, a horse with ear pain, or a cat with fever and lethargy. Fourth, manage. Treat the patient, control the tick, and address complications. Fifth, prevent. Protect the individual animal, the herd or flock, and the community. Ticks are more than a nuisance. They cause direct disease, and they can connect pathogens, reservoirs, and patients. Identification and context drive clinical decisions. So stay curious, stay prepared, stay ahead of the tick. Thanks for watching. I'm Christopher Lee, and what you know today protects everyone tomorrow.